Hey out there, YouTube friends, it's Bradford, your Carnivore Curmudgeon, with a little bit of a mixed bag today. I am going to show you some tasty food that we had while camping, but mostly this video is a review of the Kerr Lake State Recreation Area, and more specifically, the Bullocksville Campground. We had an interesting weekend there this last weekend, and it did include, thankfully, some very delicious both carnivore and keto food. But yeah, what really happened was it rained and it rained and then it decided to rain some more. So stay tuned for a little bit more on the food at the end. But Bullocksville Campground at Kerr Lake is about 6 miles off of I-85. And I got to tell you, I am so impressed with what a beautiful drive that 6 miles is. This is a rural area, and whether it's a $500,000 home or a mobile home that's been there for years, I am so impressed with the way that people took pride in their property. We drove by farm fields, we drove by just small homes, and people's lawns were mowed, and there wasn't, even if they had a 50 or 60-year-old car that had been sitting in the yard for years and years, by golly, they had trimmed the grass around it and it looked okay. So the drive-in was very nice. Now, once you get to Bullocksville, they don't have a place where you pull up and speak to a person. There's no park ranger or anything there to confirm your reservation or to communicate to you at all. Really, when you pull in, the first thing you come to is the place where there used to be a shack, and now there is just a sign that says to go ahead and proceed to your campground if you have a reservation. And if you don't, there's instructions on how to do that. But it is by reservation, first come, first serve. As you go through the campground, I'm going to spare you showing you the entire campground loop because there really isn't a whole lot to specifically see. This was on a Sunday afternoon when most of the campers had cleared out. I'm going to say there was probably only maybe a dozen of us in these 60 plus camp spaces, some of which are tent and some of which are RV. And when you first turn in, there's some nice educational signage to tell you what to be on the lookout for. If you can get your kids to look up from their video games, they might see some birds. A couple of smaller loops when you first come in, and I did take a drive down them. There wasn't, again, much to see. They were mostly tent sites. I think most of them had water, and some of them were really beautiful, but some of them were sloped like one of those fancy beds that you sit up and watch TV. If you're in your sleeping bag, it was sloped so bad. But some of them were really very nice, many of them right on the water. And then you begin to enter the loop where the RV spots are. And as far as I know, all of these RV spots had electric hookup and they had water hookup. They did not have sewer hookup, but there was a dump station back at the entrance. And we had stayed here a year ago, and we were in one of these spaces right here close to the right. And there's a little point across the water where the wind whipped around so hard that I couldn't keep a campfire lit. I couldn't keep my gas griddle lit. It just was really unrelenting. It was a beautiful spot for sure, but the wind was just tough. But what we noticed was if we walked 75 to 100 yards down the camp loop, the wind had let up. So this time we went from space 48 down to space 57. And it was not right on the lake, it was right across the street, but we're only talking about 50 yards away. And the wind wasn't nearly as bad of a problem. So we had a beautiful sight. Friday night we got set up. I failed to take any pictures, but you all know what some grilled hamburgers and hot dogs look like, and that's what we had that first night. Very pleasant evening. Our view of the lake was beautiful. Kerr Lake is a very beautiful, very clean lake. I think the only downside to how clean it is you can look in the water and see if you're going to catch a fish because it's so clean you can tell there's either fish there or there's not. And most of the time when I was out, there wasn't. But continuing on down past our camp spot for that weekend. We were just really 2 spaces away from the bathrooms, the bathhouses, and they did a very nice job on those. They are not the newest bathhouses around, but they are very well maintained and very clean. There's parking there. There's handicap parking there. There is a handicap spot right across from the bathhouse for an RV. There are other bathrooms dispersed throughout the campground, and they're strategically set. But every time we went into them, they were always clean. I think they cleaned them 2 or maybe even 3 times a day. The shower stalls were a very nice size. They did have a handicap ADA compliant shower stall. But again, very, very well done. Moving on past the bathhouse on this loop and away from our campsite, you continue around the loop to the first thing you come to then would be the boat landing. And they did have a very nice boat ramp for launching and, of course, picking up your boats. It's sort of a free-floating boat ramp. Not the ramp itself, of course, but the little piers that go out there. And it got a lot of use. There were a lot of people out, even amongst all the rain. Now, there's also plenty of spaces to park your boat if you carry a boat in there with you. The dumpster is up there on the boat landing. They did not have trash service in the loop. I believe they did it one time. I don't know if that stops. We were there the weekend after Labor Day, so perhaps it's seasonal. Curiously enough, the lids were there, but the cans were all gone. It's not inconvenient, though, to go up to the dumpster. On beyond the boat ramp, on the next loop, you come to the area where they have picnic shelters and they have a fishing pier. And the fishing pier is really well done. Very, very nice setting. When you first pull up, there's plenty of places to park if you don't want to walk up there. Just like the bird educational poster, there's a fish poster to tell you what kind of fish there are in the lake. And you can walk right down there. There's benches to sit on, and you can fish right off the pier. I have a friend who told me that he caught a 55-pound catfish here in Kerr Lake using just a chicken liver for bait. Now, I didn't go fishing this weekend, and I don't know how the fishing was. I can tell you that I followed this guy for quite a little time, and I did not see him catch anything. So I don't know if that's really an indicator of how the fishing was that weekend, but something tells me he wasn't doing it quite right. Nice picnic shelters that you can reserve for day use or for an event if you are camping there. Sporadically throughout the park, there are picnic tables with grills. Some are shaded, some are partly shaded, some are in the sun. All of them are really well maintained. Nice little playground for the tiny kiddos. There was a bathroom shelter, half shelter, half bathrooms building. Very nice ballpark. It's so sad to me that kids don't get out, and adults don't get out and play ball on a beautiful field like this, but it's there. Good place to run your dogs. Now, Saturday morning we got up and the weather was still cooperating, although the clouds were rolling in, and we had these breakfast sausage stuffed chaffles that I made, and we had a fried egg and some ham and made ourselves some breakfast sandwiches, and it hit the spot. Very delicious, but it was only about maybe an hour later that the rain started to come in. And gosh, when they came in, they just decided to stick around. And so it pretty much forced us indoors. I guess the upside to that, sitting inside a camper at a campground, is we had good internet service. Digby the dog wasn't very happy about it, but we were able to actually stream Hulu and watch the Colorado football game. We watched the Wimbledon tournament, both the men's and the women's tournament. So lemonade out of lemons. But because we were inside, and I can't cook too much inside because it smokes up the camper, we settled for some delicious poppers that I had pre-assembled back at home in the event that it rained. And then I got to fire up my my favorite toy because I'm a 10-year-old child. I guess it's like my version of the Easy Bake Oven. I just love this RV oven, and we ate poppers that night. The next morning I put the awning out. It was still raining, but I had decided I was going to make breakfast outside regardless. So I was able to do that with the awning extended. And we had some tasty sausage and we had some eggs. And this time we did go ahead and eat inside. We couldn't eat at the picnic table because it was still raining. I had a little trouble with the small outside refrigerator, so I pulled it out because I wanted to make sure it was working okay. And I made a discovery. As long as we've had this camper, I never knew it had these tiny little ice cubes that you could put in the tiny little freezer in this thing. So I had to take advantage and make some tiny ice cubes that may or may not have gone into a tiny adult beverage. May or may not have. Now later we were able to make steaks and hamburgers, and because I had a good coal fire going, I decided I was going to make hot dogs too. There was nothing going to go to waste. We take it all to work and we eat leftovers throughout the week. And of course, that includes Digger, who got his own hamburger. And Sunday morning, we decided to skip the traditional breakfast type foods and make kind of a brunch. And that included this homemade kielbasa that I made and smoked at home. And nothing goes so good with kielbasa, in my opinion, than some peppers and onions. So we grilled those up. And yeah, it's not carnivore, it's keto, but no apologies from me. It was also delicious. And all in all, I would rather be camping in the rain than not camping at all. So we had a nice getaway weekend at Kerr Lake, Bullocksville Campground, and we had some delicious food and we enjoyed ourselves immensely. I sure do appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you next time.